Before Hiroshima became a name forever tied to fire and ash, the world had already been drowning in war for years. World War II began from a mix of aggression, imperial ambition, broken peace, and global rivalry. In Europe, Nazi Germany invaded country after country, pushing the world into chaos. In Asia, Japan had been expanding its empire for years, invading China and spreading its military power across the Pacific. Japan's leaders believed that to survive and become stronger, they needed more land, more resources, and more control. That ambition brought destruction to millions and turned much of Asia into a battlefield. What began as political conflict and military expansion soon became a world war that consumed entire nations. The United States was pulled deeper into that war after the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, when Japanese aircraft struck the American naval base in Hawaii. After that day, the war between Japan and the United States became total and bitter.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Across the Pacific, battles were fought island by island, sea by sea, with enormous losses on both sides. By 1945, Japan was weakening, but it had not surrendered. American leaders feared that a full invasion of Japan would cost hundreds of thousands of lives, perhaps even more. They wanted a way to end the war quickly, force surrender, and show overwhelming power before the world, especially as global politics after the war were already beginning to shift. That is where the atomic bomb entered history. The United States had spent years building it in secret through the Manhattan Project, creating a weapon unlike anything ever seen before. American officials believed that using the bomb would shock Japan into immediate surrender and avoid a long, bloody invasion. But there was also another reason beneath the surface: to demonstrate unmatched military power at the dawn of a new world order. So when Hiroshima was chosen as a target, it was not only a military decision, it was a moment where war, science, fear, and power came together in the most devastating way the modern world had ever seen. And on the morning of August 6, 1945, that decision fell from the sky. August 6, 1945, began like any other summer morning in Hiroshima. The city woke beneath a warm sky, wrapped in the familiar sounds of cicadas and the quiet rhythm of ordinary life. The air was already heavy with heat. Mothers prepared breakfast in small kitchens. Children adjusted their school uniforms and hurried toward the streets. Workers climbed onto bicycles and moved toward factories, while streetcars rolled through the city with the same metallic rattle people had heard 1,000 times before. Though the war had dragged on for years and Japan was clearly suffering, Hiroshima had, until then, escaped the firestorms that had consumed so many other cities. To the people below, that morning still carried the fragile comfort of routine. They believed, at least for a few more minutes, that their city had somehow been spared. Far above them, however, history was already on its way. At more than 30,000 feet in the air, a silver B-29 bomber named Enola Gay cut through the morning sky. It looked calm and almost beautiful in the sunlight, but inside it carried something the world had never seen used in war before: an atomic bomb named Little Boy. The weapon measured more than 11 feet in length and weighed close to 10,000 pounds. It was built from uranium-235, and although the amount of material inside it was relatively small, the force it contained was beyond anything humanity had ever released. This was not merely another bomb. It was the beginning of a new age, one born not from hope, but from destruction. The man piloting the aircraft was Colonel Paul Tibbets, only 30 years old, disciplined, skilled, and trained to complete the mission with precision. He and his crew had spent weeks preparing in secrecy on the island of Tinian. Even among the men aboard, very few fully understood the true nature of what they were carrying. They knew only that it was a special weapon, one expected to shock Japan into surrender and bring the war to a close. In the darkness before dawn, mechanics had worked under harsh lights, fitting the bomb into the aircraft while the tropical heat clung to their skin. The crew approached the plane in silence. There was little laughter, little conversation, only the low hum of engines and the awareness that this mission was unlike any other. At 2:45 in the morning, Enola Gay lifted off the runway and rose into the darkness, followed by two other aircraft, the Great Artiste and Necessary Evil. Their task was not only to accompany the mission, but to observe it, measure it, and record it. What was about to happen was military action, but it was also an experiment in power, a test whose results would alter the course of history. As dawn spread over the Pacific, the crew moved quietly inside the plane. Some checked instruments, others stared from the windows or wrote in logbooks. They had been told to proceed only if weather conditions over the target were clear. If Hiroshima was covered by clouds, the mission would move to another city. But as the aircraft approached Japan, the skies over Hiroshima opened perfectly. There was almost no cloud cover at all. Below, the city remained unsuspecting. Buildings stretched along the rivers. Bridges connected neighborhoods filled with schools, homes, shops, hospitals, and offices. Tiny figures moved through the streets, commuting, talking, living. The bombardier, Thomas Farabee, looked through his sight and located the target, the Ioi Bridge, a distinctive T-shaped structure near the center of the city. His voice, when he announced that the target was in sight, was calm, but inside the aircraft, every man understood the meaning of those words. The plane leveled. The final seconds approached. At exactly 8:15 a.m., the bomb bay doors opened. Little Boy dropped from the aircraft and began falling through the clear morning air. It took 43 seconds to reach its detonation point, 43 seconds in which the people below continued doing what people do in every city on Earth, they did not know that the future had already been cut away from them. When the bomb reached approximately 1,900 feet above Hiroshima, it exploded. In less than a second, uranium atoms split and triggered a chain reaction beyond human imagination. At the center of the explosion, temperatures rose hotter than the sun. A blinding white flash consumed Hiroshima, brighter than anything the human eye could endure. People who looked toward it were instantly blinded, many dying where they stood. Near the blast center, bodies were completely vaporized, leaving behind only dark shadows burned into stone and concrete. Silent marks of lives erased in a single instant. The city center vanished almost immediately. Homes, schools, hospitals, and streets were destroyed by intense heat and pressure. A powerful shockwave tore outward, crushing buildings, shattering windows miles away, and throwing people through the air. Fires erupted everywhere. Clothes caught fire, skin blistered and peeled, and survivors found themselves trapped in a world that no longer resembled a city. On the ground, Hiroshima had become a living nightmare. Streets were buried under rubble, rivers filled with the injured and dying. Survivors later described the air as thick with smoke, ash, and the smell of burning that never faded. Hospitals were destroyed, and doctors were either dead or overwhelmed. There was no medicine, no clean water, and little hope. Within hours, a new horror appeared. People who seemed uninjured began vomiting, their hair falling out, their bodies weakening. It was radiation, invisible and deadly. Some died within days, others suffered for weeks before finally collapsing. When rescue teams entered Hiroshima, they found a city almost erased. Buildings were gone, steel twisted, and walls marked with the burned shadows of people who had once stood there.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet.
3 days later, Nagasaki faced the same fate. Soon after, Japan surrendered, ending the war. But for the survivors, the suffering did not end. Hiroshima slowly rebuilt, not to forget, but to remind the world of the cost. It became a symbol of both destruction and warning, a reminder that humanity had entered an age where its own power could destroy everything in an instant.